Good morning, everyone. Today, I'd like to do a brief devotion on walking and growing with God. And I want us to think of growth as a circle or a balloon, something that requires being stretched, being pushed out to the limits to grow. Often in life, we stay in the middle, we stay where we're comfortable, where there's no pressure or resistance. That's where we like to be. But we often don't see God show up in powerful ways in our lives because of that. There's no need to call on Him for help, but when we're taken to our limits and stretched, that's when we grow. John Eldredge talks about, in his book called Waking the Dead, he talks about two things that we need to walk with God. One is wisdom, and that comes from His Word, that comes from God, and largely keeps us safe and protects us. But the second thing he said we need is revelation. And that's where God Himself shows up. He calls us out, a lot of times into situations or to do things that may look unwise, that may look really risky, and we say, I don't want to do that. God, that doesn't sound good. But that's where He calls us to the limits of ourselves or our situation, and we have to rely on Him. The major growth and transformation times I've had in my life with God, in my walk, in my relationship with Him, have been at times, one, where I've felt either completely abandoned or helpless, and God showed up in some really powerful ways and made it totally clear that He was with me. There was no question that God was with me. I felt His presence. I knew He was there. And that transformed me and has enabled me to go through my life and do other things that I never would have done because I know He's with me, even if I'm alone and I've got nobody else. God's always got my back, and that's really changed my life. And the second major thing for me was about 4 or 5 years ago, when He called me to leave my career of 12 years in engineering and go back to school for chiropractic. He had me put my house on the market. It ended up being my last day at work. I packed up my house with the help of my brother and my parents and left a week later, a week after my house went on the market. I had no offers on the house, basically just leaving it behind in the hands of God and my friends. And the day we got to Oregon, we got there in the wee hours, the next day I had an offer on my house. But God had also called me to give up all the money I had saved and asked me to give it towards mission work. And I did. But that seemed really unwise, so now I'm on the road with basically no money and no way to pay my next mortgage payment. And we got to Oregon, I got an offer on the house, and it closed the day before I owed my next mortgage payment. And the house was totally paid off, and I had money to live on, and I had money for school. God showed up. It was unquestionably Him. There's no way that could have worked out without Him. And it really stretched me in my faith. And God showed up in our most desperate need, our most desperate hour as humanity, to solve our unsolvable problem of sin. He showed up physically on this earth as Jesus through the miracle of the virgin birth, which is not humanly possible. He died on the cross as we celebrated last night on Good Friday, and He rose from the dead on Easter, which we're going to celebrate tomorrow, the miracle of the resurrection. It's not humanly possible, but God did it to save us. Scripture says multiple times that God will never leave us or forsake us as His people. In Matthew 19, Jesus told His disciples, with man it's impossible to be saved, but with God all things are possible. And in Romans 8:32 it says, He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also with Him graciously give us all things? So as we approach Easter tomorrow And as God may be calling you into some really uncomfortable areas in life, or places where you feel like, God, I've got nothing, I've got no one, look back on his faithfulness at Easter. Reflect on what's going to be tomorrow, the miracle of the resurrection. And I pray that you follow God's voice and that you would obey and follow him out to those areas of growth where you're at your limit, but he can show up in a powerful way and prove his love and his presence with you. That's my prayer for you as we approach Easter. God bless you.